Happy birthday to Hans Devines, who is, a colleague of ours. So happy birthday, Hans, and also happy birthday to a very good friend of mine, Jan Gilbert. I thought your birthday was yesterday, and I was busy telling you happy birthday yesterday, and you told me no, it's today. So happy birthday, Jan.
Yeah. Yesterday I had to take a purge. I don't know, my sinuses.
My sinus. This Sahara, this is killing me this year again.
What?
It's bad. So it's going to be bad again today.
Well, I immediately got relief, but yesterday I was sneezing, I was snotty.
Yeah, Paul and myself was saying yesterday we were wondering if the Sahara still has dust.
Yeah.
It's also my cousin's birthday. Happy birthday, Jenny.
Jenny, who can I get to?
She knows who she is.
Well, Jenny Ramcharan, she's Auntie Joyce's daughter, who I always talk about. I always talk about Auntie Joyce.
Okay, yes, you do.
Mm-hmm.
All right. Okay, so that's as I say, it would have been interesting to find out the people who said no, one of whom was Mrs. R. Their thoughts on it,
Well, they'll be careful, eh?
Why?
I understand Puritan might be contraindicated to Cialis, so.
Puritan what?
Might be contraindicated to Cialis.
Here we go.
You said it with such. You said it, but he said it with such confidence. Wendell, we have to take him.
Thanks for the information, Paul.
All right. Well, gentlemen, let's bring our guest online. He's on. And welcome to those on YouTube and on Facebook. Thank you so much for joining us. We do have Mr. Michael Annisette online. Michael, are you playing some music?
No.
That wasn't you?
I was listening to your radio station because I was waiting for 706 to be.
I know. I don't know what I'm to Paul. You need to buy your doubles or something.
All right.
I
agree with that.
Yeah.
Morning. Yeah. Morning. Trinidad and Tobago and the listening public. Thanks for the opportunity afforded by your radio station for the National Trade Union Center through me to express our views on the 2% off for over 8 years by the government. And as I always say, blessings and the divine blessings to all the people of Trinidad and Tobago.
Right, how are the conversations going with the CPO?
Well, there's no conversation after the offer, the 2%. We are meeting this evening. Where we will analyze. We have done a comprehensive analysis of the proposals to demonstrate that the proposals cannot make economic sense. We see it as economic violence and abuse against the workers. And we'll be doing some counter proposals. And we have noted that the government, through the CPO, have attempted to illegally hoist a 4 years wage agreement on workers, which is illegal, and which has to agree to between parties. The Industrial Relations Act speaks to a 3-year agreement and not a 5-year. The 3 years is the normal. If you're going 5 years, the two parties must agree to go to 5 years. So the attempt by the government to give us 2 4-year agreement is illegal, misdirected, and very insensitive, I must say.
Yeah. Well, the Prime Minister did raise the issue in discussing it at his press conference on Sunday, that this is what the country could afford. He was telegraphing that, in that even though prices of oil and gas may be momentarily high because of the Ukraine-Russia war and whatever other global supply issues that are happening, that they had to look at the bigger picture, that if those prices were to fall, how was the state to pay salaries if they were unreasonable? So now he did say that don't overreact, and there's still room for discussion. But what is your opinion on the Prime Minister's explanation?
You see, from where we sit in the National Trade Union, I've now come from a meeting with port workers who are so totally upset. And may I put on the radio station for the benefit of the general public that the Seamen's Union and the Port Authority management sat down and negotiated a 12% wage increase for 2014 to 2017. And to date, the government have refused to instruct the Port Authority to implement a legitimately negotiated wage increase for workers. Having said that, it clearly demonstrates in the mind of the National Trade Union Center that the government is on a failed policy of wage restraint. Wage restraint has demonstrated all over the world to be a flawed and failed economic policy. And the question of wage-led growth and job-led growth is the new model that is being expressed by economists, and even the World Bank has now jumped on that bandwagon. So that to offer any worker in Trinidad and Tobago over an 8-year period, 1%, 0.0001%. And let us understand what 1% is, and I'll break it down simple. If you are getting $300, 1% of $1 is 1 cent. So that what the government is offering you is 30 cents for someone who is working for $300, all right, a week, and some working for that a fortnight. And that is a reality in Trinidad and Tobago. And that proposal is made against the backdrop of the astronomical increases in basic items and services and goods that the workers have had to face without an increase in their wages. You cannot build an economy. You cannot build a country like that. What is happening is that we are seeing an income inequality in Trinidad and Tobago that is frightening and that can lead to all kinds of social issues that we, as the government, the business community, and the trade union must sit down and come up with something that is reasonable, bearing in mind that we have to keep the economy going. And yes, we are competing in a global market. But let me add, if I'm permitted, that Biden, America, when he got into power, he recognized the role of the trade union and by extension workers, and he increased the minimum wages to $15. And there was no fallout. The economy grew as a consequence of that. And why? Because workers had the purchasing power to buy the goods and services. And that is what we have to discuss, right? And then, yeah.
I think, Wendell, I will never. I will never be against workers being paid properly, and I will never be against people getting an increase, because Lord knows I am also underpaid in the things that I do. So I don't argue those things. But I think the part of the question that Richard would have asked that you have not dealt with yet is in the case of what the future holds with this current little blip that we have been experiencing in terms of the increase. What would happen down the road? Because the war may end and we may go back to worse than where we were before. What happens in that?
Are you so am I to juxtapose that you are telling me that we must have an economy where you play workers peanuts? That is what you are saying?
No.
Allow me to finish. Wendell, I listen to you carefully. Are you saying that where there is no control over prices and where workers are faced with astronomical price increases on a daily, ongoing basis on basic items, okay, that we are saying that your wages must not reflect that reality? Are you saying?
I never said that.
I am asking the question because you see, wages is fundamental to any economy. And when you have depressed and low wages, your economy suffers. And that is why the new model of wage-led growth and job-led growth is now being used as a new model as opposed to wage restraint and salary restraint.
Mr. Annisette, let me ask a question here.
That is happening all over the world.
Let me ask a question here, Mr. Annisette. Good morning. How much of this scenario that the National Trade Union Center and other unions who are in negotiations with the state find themselves is as a result of the extremely retroactive negotiations, in this case 2014 to 2018, when it is difficult to quantify the cycle of the economy, whether it be high oil prices, low oil prices, and the state's so-called ability to pay as part one. And if these negotiations had been completed, for example, for 2014, by 2017, there'd be a clearer example of what the state could afford within that time frame, because workers are always now behind the curve where these negotiations are concerned. And should we be, and this is a general question here now, because it's a fact of life that there are going to be wage negotiations for every wage period. It's a fact that these wage negotiations are going to put more burden on the state to pay. Fact, right?
No, I disagree with you. No.
So budgets should take into consideration these types of exigent circumstances. Well, it's not even exigent circumstance, because it's a fact of life where the wage bill on the state is going to increase as negotiations continue to increase, so that workers can meet the rising cost of living. And the type of budgeting that should accommodate for that in a timely manner.
All right, let me answer you. And that is a putting on question, and I respect the question. But what is the reality? All right, the reality is that every union would have submitted the proposals on time, and the government, as the government who gives instructions to pay wages and other allowances, they have failed to do so, notwithstanding all the efforts by the various unions and the Federation, NATUC, and JTM, to impress upon the government the need to address these outstanding negotiations on a timely basis. But more importantly, let me deal with your point. Here it is, the Port Authority was able to negotiate in 2015 an agreement for 2014 to 2017. So there was no retroactivity or anything. And the very state government would have refused to instruct the Port Authority to implement the very 12% that was negotiated in good faith. So then the question I am saying, it is a clear government policy of wage restraint, is a microeconomic policy that has failed internationally. And one must understand that, you know, it's a philosophy that we're dealing with, whether workers should get wage increases or I'm letting 10 years. At Cipriani College, the academic staff have not received a wage increase since 2008. That is a reality. And it's not because they did not approach government to increases. The government have this say, and they determine they're not going to give the instruction. So let us place the reality on the table. And I would like to see, NATUC would like to see the unions in NATUC, and I think I'm speaking for all the unions, JTM, everybody, that we negotiate, as you say, like in the United States and other European countries. When your collective agreement is coming to an end, you sit down and you negotiate, so that when the collective agreement comes to an end, you will be able to get your wage increase and all other benefits. So you can, as you rightly say, evaluate where you want to go in the context of your revenue. And then we do that in the private sector. Don't forget that. We don't have any private sector where you have negotiations outstanding for 10, 15, and 12 years. It only happens in the government. And I want to make the distinction, comrades, brothers, and sisters, all right, that the government as an employer must be separate to the government as the government, because the government in effect is an employer, employing over 90,000 people. And therefore they have a responsibility under the Industrial Relations Act to complete negotiations in a timely fashion. And they have failed to do that. It is not the workers' fault. It is not the union fault, because all the proposals have been submitted to the government. Are you aware that there are unions who would have referred this matter to the industrial court for government failure to meet and treat in good faith with the unions over the period that is retroactive.
Mr. Annisette, what would be the counter proposal coming from the unions at this point, at this stage?
Comrade, the counter proposals will be, and I will put it simply, all the union is asking is that in 2014 or 2013 in some instances, right, my money was able to buy a basket of goods. I'm not talking about basic items. I'm not talking about luxury goods, no. Basic goods that is required for you to ensure that your children get proper nutrition, etc., so that they could go to school and learn. All we are asking is that a process be found to maintain that. We're not asking to go above that. And more importantly, I want to make the point in the public domain. Why the minister?
What percentage that will be, Ms. Annisette?
No. You're not asking me to negotiate on the radio station.
No, I'm asking you. I'm asking you.
Well, you did say. Well, you did say SWWTU did negotiate for 12%. I think it was.
Because that was a settled negotiation. So I am free to say it.
So that seems to be kind of like a working figure that we could use.
Yeah, it sounds so.
No, I am not going to get into speculation. But what I am saying, it is very easy to look at the consumer index prices, where it was at that point in time, where it is at this point in time, and to find a reasonable margin within that period. That is what we are saying. We are not unreasonable. And let me make the point for the public if you all are not aware. You know the CPO asks us to give up cola, that we cannot merge cola. And we say, listen, in the interest of the economy, we are prepared to do that. We get, cursed by the workers, and I could understand that. But you know, in doing that, we would have given up over $18,000, right, annually, right, per worker. The government hasn't said that, because that speaks to the responsibility of the unions, because we recognize that we are in an economic situation and we cannot expect, all right, to get gold. But at least give us some silver now, man.
So Mr. Annisette, the government has put up, and as Richard and I described it on Monday, a whole lot of zeros and 2 1s. What is the union? What are the figures the union will throw?
What is the figures the union? You're asking me the same question in a different way. And all I will simply say that we will look at the consumer price index to see where goods and services basic would have risen from that period to present, and we.
So if I'm to assume, if I have to go with
I think his connection is lost.
He's freezing a bit,
To find a reasonable outcome.
So if I'm to go with what you just said, right? If the calculations work out with what you just said, if it work out to be a whole lot of zeros and 1.5%, is that what you're gonna go with?
If that is what an honest analysis will throw up, and we are saying that your purchasing power only decreased by 5 percentage points over an 8-year, 10-year, or 12-year period, well, we cannot fight the statistics. But what I know, statistics do not lie, but statistics can be manipulated to reflect what you want to reflect. But we will be dealing with statistics in its reality and how it affects workers that are employed by the government.
Mm-hmm. And you have not worked out those things as yet?
Yeah, well, the fact that I can speak on those items gives you, I hope, the understanding that we are talking what we know about and what the figures and the statistics would have shown that have been thrown up by the Central Statistical Office and even the Central Bank and other economists.
So give us an idea. What are the figures, the statistics show?
No, again, brother, the statistic that I'm talking about, right, reveals the statistic is not 2%.
Is it more or less?
Yeah, it is not. But if we make a noise about 2%, it will be less than 2%. I mean, it is much more than 2% over a 8-year period. That is what I am.
I know the Minister of Finance. I think on the news last night said that the wage bill from the public sector cost the state approximately $19 billion per annum.
Yeah.
So $19 billion out of the budget goes towards salaries. And I'm just wondering, what would be, and I get it. We are in a time where prices have risen astronomically, like in no other period that I can remember. And all of this resulted because of the pandemic, because of other issues with the Ukraine-Russia war. So prices are exorbitant. Prices just seem to be continuously rising every time you go into any supermarket. The price of transport has risen. The price of even taking a taxi has risen. So I know people are struggling to meet all of those additional expenses. So I do believe the unions have a really powerful and cogent argument for why 1% is unacceptable. I think Wendell is trying to get to the point of what is acceptable. Is it 3% over 5 years?
Yeah.
Which is like 15%, which takes it up to nearly 22 billion in terms of the wage.
Unfortunately, Wendell is not the Minister of Finance or the CPO. So that we will have that discussions with the CPO and the Minister of Finance.
Well, the CPO is listening to the CPO listens to us, Mr. Annisette, so you might as well start the conversation.
Well, hello. If the CPO was listening to you all, they won't have made that vexatious, economic, violent, and abusive proposals to workers. And more so to workers who would have worked during the pandemic. You are telling police, you are telling port workers, you are telling nurses, you are telling electricity workers, you are telling MTS workers, you are telling bus drivers, you are telling daily rated workers who came out during the pandemic to clean the street, dock workers to ensure that the vessels that are coming, that we offloaded. Are you aware of how many dock workers die? How many nurses die? And then you are telling them that me as a government, see your value as 1% over 8-year period. That is vexatious. That is insensitive.
Mr. Annisette,
and then
agree on that.
You made the case.
I am agreeing with you on that.
All right. Well then, let me ask you a question. Having agreed with what I am articulating on behalf of NATUC and all the workers, what you believe will be a reasonable wage settlement?
But I have another question for you.
Answer me now.
Hold on.
All right.
I could go ridiculous, because you see me, I believe I believe I am being underpaid too. So, but let's deal with the issue. Let me ask you this. Prior to the CPO making the announcement that he made, were you all party to any sort of discussion, any sort of negotiation with him before that?
Yes, we were. Yeah. Hello. That is the process in which the negotiation goes by. We submit proposals long before for all the outstanding periods. The CPO would have came and say that he could only discuss current, all right, because of the pie that they are, the pie of money that they have. They asked us to give up. They don't want COLA merge. We agreed with that. They asked the unions to look at some of the allowances and concentrate only on allowances that you believe is necessary. We looked at that too, okay? And we sat down with the CPO in good faith and on the basis that we would have demonstrated that we want to meet and treat with the CPO and the government in good faith, recognizing some of the constraints that we have. And we had those kinds of discussion with the CPO, and the CPO came back and offered 0.001%, 0.001%.
Mr. Annisette, I have a question for you. One, it's a two-part question. One,
okay,
how much of this initial offer is just a strategy by the state, well, by the CPO and by extension the state, to say, well, let me start at the ridiculous offer and it could only be up after that, because then anything I offer after that, I've compromised. And two, how do we reconcile a country, and I know it's private sector and public sector are totally different operations, a country where on one hand, public sector workers are being told we have real economic constraints, but on the other hand, they are seeing private sector companies, including financial institutions and other private sector companies, posting multi-million-dollar profit margins in the same country, operating in the same economic space. How should we reconcile that? And shouldn't that be part of the conversation?
Comrade, that is part of the conversation that we are having. Let me tell you something. And I want to compliment the management of Angostura and at with Co. Because we sat down and we were able, Siemens Union, right, under my leadership, right, and negotiate within recent time a 6-year agreement. But we sat down and we discussed all the implications, all the facts, what will be required, what we will have to do to ensure that we compete, what we'll have to do to increase revenues, everything. We actually and physically participated in a management team to address all those issues. And I am telling you that the percentage increase that we agreed to for the 6-year period, right, is above 12 percentage points. And that is a company that is operating, as you rightly say, in the same economic space. And the question that you have to ask, and then that is what I'm telling you, there is a model and a philosophy where wage restrained by the IMF, which this government have been following, is a mechanism, right, in terms of microeconomic to allow the economy to go, not understanding that when you view labor simply as a cost, and when you do not view labor as a functional distribution mechanism, and where you do not understand that labor has an input in terms of the aggregate demands for goods and services in your country, we're going to end up with what we are seeing here, with income and wealth inequality that is going to drive this country to an economic precipice that we will live to regret.
But doesn't it also speak, Mr. Annisette? Doesn't it also speak?
Because you making the fundamental point, you know, because when it had the recession in the United States, is the government roll out all those big companies, you know, Ford, etc.
Exactly, but doesn't it also speak to a conversation about state sector underperformance in terms of revenue generation? Because if my contention is, and again, private sector is different than public sector for many different reasons.
Which
public
sectors in some instances, because
right, but the private sector is primarily concerned with profit maximization, while the public sector has to include social intervention and support mechanisms for a wide cadre of. So the mandates are very different, not completely different, but very different. Yeah. When are we going to get to the point where we start to question the management of the economy, one, in the context of what the economy can afford, to make it a more competitive economy generally, so it can afford more for public sector workers, and tied into that, and I know we've had this conversation before, the different components of productivity in that.
Right. Okay, listen.
And the structure of the economy so that it can perform better.
All right. Okay. Let me tell you something, eh? From since I had hair on my head,
that's
we have been
300 years
talking
ago.
about diversification. And I would have heard the learned Prime Minister, present Prime Minister, you ain't talking about diversification. That's a fact, because that seems to be a bad word, because we were getting money from the oil and gas. And people do not realize that oil and gas is not an inexhaustible source of our revenue, and therefore the need to maximize our return on investment.
But Mr. Annisette, sorry to interrupt you, but the issue of a better performing, a more effectively performing economy is not only reposed in the conversation about diversification. The
I am not saying
structure
that.
of the state sector is extremely inefficient and uncompetitive in many areas.
Hello. I am not saying that what you are saying. Let me give you an example. National Flour Mill, Mr. Barrett, Vasan Barrett was the CEO. He is still alive. We sat down because National Flour Mill was going through some crisis, and we sat down and we were able to come up with a negotiated settlement that speaks to some base rates, but any other increases will have to be tied into productivity and the monies that the company earn. And we were able to pull National Flour out of that economic cliff. Another example, at the same Angostura, are you aware that this union, when Angostura was going through their crisis, we sat down and we agreed to give up certain benefits on the conditions of A, B, and C, and we were able now to pull Angostura out of the economic precipice. The point that I'm making, if there's a willingness to engage us in the discussions that you are talking about, and I want to discuss that because productivity means something to me. Because if you have an economy and anybody believes that they have to work 2 hours and get paid for 8 hours, you are destroying your economy. And that's an economic fact that we have been expressing to workers. And we want to discuss that also with the government. But we have a problem. We have a system of governance in Trinidad and Tobago where cabinet makes decisions, and that is it. They don't engage us, they don't consult us in issues that may affect the economy and by extension workers, because the government employ the most amount of people so that we have to have this kind of conversation. All right, and then you see, you spoke about Mr. Imbat saying that the wage bill is 19 billion. 19 billion is what percentage of the total revenue that the government have made? You know, nobody asking that question. And I'm telling you now that the rule of thumb, all right, is that it's supposed to be between 15 to 30%. And where you have a service industry, where it have a lot of employment, it goes as much as 50% of your revenues. That is an economic fact that Mr. Imbat or the Prime Minister cannot deny. And the question that we must ask ourselves, what this 19 billion represents in the context of the overall revenue that the government would have passed on the supplementary revenue. Because one has to remember, we have to pay the police, you know.
Mr. Annisette, I have two questions.
All right, okay.
One.
Ask me, push.
What is the minimum amount that the unions are willing to accept? That's one question.
No. Comrade. Do not ask me that question, please. I would not, and let me make it clear, for those who have eyes to see, I am not prepared to negotiate any wage increases on a radio station.
Wendell tried his best to get it to
commit. For them to go and take the clip and play back Michael, and instead said
that the same way that NATUC condemns the government when they go on the political platform and when they go in the meeting with their members to make mention on decisions that they taken that will affect workers at WASA, the Port, T and Tech, Web, Petrotrin, without engaging us in the initial stages, is the same principle that I will have to apply in this instance. I cannot stand up for something and then do something wrong.
All right. Yeah. But if Richard has already said, the CPO is listening. So you're getting a chance to make your play.
No, sir. Hello. The CPO is the de jure employer. The CPO takes his instruction from the Interministerial Advisory Committee, which is headed by Minister Imbat. And if the CPO agree with the unions, right, he has no authority to implement our agreement. It has to be authorized by the Minister of Finance. So we must understand the protocol and the modus operandi in which negotiations are done in Trinidad and Tobago, right? So let us get that clear. The CPO is the secretariat, and he's the de jure employer.
Mr. Annisette, before we run out of time, what other issues are being discussed in addition to, of course, a lot of focus on the percentages, of course.
All right, pension.
Obviously, what are issues?
Pension rights, because as I speak to you, daily rated workers don't have a pension in the 21st century. The question of upgrading of salaries and adjustment in salaries, and I'll give you an example. You will have in San Fernando Borough Council and in Port of Spain and in Arima, a mason doing the same jobs, but they have different terms and conditions of employment. All right. So then with the question of regularizing workers who would have been working for 10, 15 years continuously and non-stop and still are deemed to be casual. You know, so there are several other issues that we are discussing. All right, the whole question of a health plan that will speak to when a worker gets sick or when a worker retires, that he has the ability to still continue in a health plan. All right, because the older that you get, one will understand that your health will be affected. So there is a myriad of issues outside of
has the job evaluation exercise been completed in terms of positions and structures and all that?
No. Well, you see that is one of the saddest things that I have experienced. When I was president of NATUC, we raised it, and there was a commitment to do it. We are going into 10 years now, and that exercise has not yet been completed by the government. It's unfortunate. But that is a reality.
I thought it was close to completion, you know, by the CPO's office.
I have been hearing that, and we have been told that they were short-staffed at the CPO's office, and they are now up to strength, and they have mandated a group of people to try and complete that particular exercise. You understand? And then what we pointed out, that it would have been completed for one group of workers. And while there are different unions that are representing government workers, you can use that as a template to fast track the process, because all the metrics and the dynamics would have been evaluated. So you have a template that will make it easier rather than reinventing the wheel again that takes that long.
What about the plans for Friday, this supposed discussion about shutdown or protest action?
Friday, let me make it clear, we have written to the Commissioner of Police, and we expect that in a democratic society that the permission will be given to the National Trade Union Center.
What's the request for?
The request is for us to be able to gather at Memorial Park at 9 o'clock and walk through the streets of Port of Spain, expressing our side of the story so that the general public will be able to understand what is the issues and not only the narrative that has been put in the public domain by the minister.
When you say gather at Memorial, you mean in Memorial Park or around?
No, gather there. That is the point where we gather before we start our peaceful and rightful demonstration against the 2%.
Where is it expected to end?
It is expected to end by the financial complex.
Prime Minister in his office.
Yes.
Where else can it end, Paul?
I ask it. I don't
know. May I take this opportunity to tell every worker in Trinidad and Tobago, all right, that you need to come out and stand up for what is right, because this is an insult. And to date, we haven't heard anything concrete from the minister, from the CPO. He says he's waiting on counter proposals. But as your team rightly say, and I was on another TV program, and they were saying that 2% over 8-year period, 0.00001 is really stretching it, and it is unfair, and everybody is expressing that. And it's very unfortunate that the CPO, who said that he didn't come here to waste time, and he want these negotiations to finish, and he want to cut through all the chairs, will bring such a ridiculous proposal, and a proposal, as we say, that is economic violence and abuse against the workers, because you are telling workers
using that phrase, Mr. Annisette.
Yes,
what do you think?
Because you are trying to pauperize government employees. That is what you are trying to do. And the very sad
that's a word.
Hold on. The very sad government, in order to pay market rates, right? They bring in workers on contract to do the same work with public servants working on the same desk, because they recognize that they cannot bring in the talents with the kind of wages that the public sector is paying. And then if you recognize that as a government,
before you run out of time, Mr. Annisette, listen. What do you think the private sector is conspicuously quiet in these conversations? Given your theory that, well, and it's a theory that can be held up, that if the public sector workforce gets what you consider a decent salary, it means more spending power, disposable income for the private sector to benefit from.
Well. You see, some may be so inclined, I know a few, but the majority are profit-driven. And then profit must take the front seat, and wage distribution has to take the back seat. It is unfortunate. But as you make the point that in an economy that going through all this hasarara economically, we are seeing profits, which we are not against. Let me make that clear. That is being declared by business people in Trinidad, financial institution, etc. And it raises the question as to the governance and how the government manage our economy, and whether or not they are putting the emphasis in the right direction. But what I will want to say to you all, that your human capital, your human resource is your most critical ingredient in any society. And when you fail to recognize that, we're going to have consequences. And
What's your response to the Prime Minister saying, well, if we go beyond what we can afford, we'll have to borrow money to pay public sector wages, and that may lead to retrenchment in some instances?
Yeah. No.
I'm happy you raised that, Paul. I was waiting on the
Prime Minister always said that. When workers was arguing for their retroactive payments, all right, the nurses, he said the same thing. And it is rather insensitive. And let me make it clearer, for the Prime Minister to make that kind of statement. His statement has only led to getting workers incensed. So what the Prime Minister is saying, you're going to send home nurses who go man the hospitals. You're going to send home police who is going to man the station with all this crime. You're going to send in prison officers who are going to see about the prison service.
One of the Prime Minister's responses is going to be, and has been, that, well, let me ask the question now. Let me ask the question, Michael. Let me ask the question.
All right. Sorry, I do apologize.
In difficult times, we have not retrenched. So we're trying to manage moving forward, so we will not have to retrench. That is part of the narrative.
All right, hello. But let me answer you something. We are now talking about the human resource as the most valuable capital. Is the Prime Minister saying that he's comfortable to know that the police officer, and I know some of them working two.
All right, he'll have to repeat what he's saying.
Jobs to make, right? 2 and 3 jobs in order to make ends meet, because there is no control over price increases in Trinidad and Tobago. And you cannot have your cake and eat it. If you say that let the market forces takes its place, and if you make the wrong statement that let the luxury liner rise up so that the pirogue's going to get money, that is a misrepresentation and a flawed concept of what capital and labor is all about. Because there's a synergy between capital and labor, and you must put a value right onto what people put on the table. And then if I'm a public servant and I have to live payday to payday, and my pay cannot meet my basic standards, and I'm talking basic, I'm not talking luxury standard. What do you expect in the context of productivity and morale within the public service, the police service, the port, the PTSC, the MTS, and all these groups of people, the daily rated workers? It doesn't work, so you cannot look at
when I put that comment on the table, I'm going to incense even more. Somebody told me, and I'm not going to call the person's name.
Yeah.
Well, quote unquote, not me saying this. They say they're struggling, but they're paying $600 to go all inclusive and jump up.
No, well, hello.
I mean,
hello.
But I think, yeah,
hello,
Mike,
hello,
but my...
No, you see, I would like to answer the person who is paying that. Who does pay the $3,000 to play mass? It ain't me. It ain't the dock worker. It ain't the policeman. It ain't the nurse, because they can't afford it. And that is why I'm saying that we have an inequality of wages and wealth and income in this country that we are going to live to regret. Because I could carry you in Valsay now and show you homes that have 6 stars.
I think you've just started the real conversation in this country, Mr. Annisette.
Yeah.
The inequality gap that's widening in the country. And are we addressing that?
No, well, this is.
But I think the entire conversation is on that. Because that's what you're talking about.
And the National Trade Union Center is willing to start that conversation. And then that is why we are saying that the new business model that even the IMF is holding on to in the World Bank, that you get a better economy when you have decent living wages and sustainable jobs. When you retrench workers, it's workers who are on the breadline, it's children who are on the breadline, because when you retrench one worker, you have to multiply that by 4 or 5. And then that is the implication for Trinidad and Tobago. And let us talk about the crime. We have to talk about crime, the bloodbaths and the narcotic economy that is overrunning our legitimate economy. And I want to raise another question that nobody raises. When profit outstrips productivity in a country, what happens to that country? And I'm saying in Trinidad and Tobago, profits have outstripped productivity by more than 65 percentage full points. And that is a reality. And we are not addressing that. Why are we not addressing that? But we talk about labor productivity.
What do you mean by that, Mr. Annisette?
What it means that when you have obscene profits that we are seeing in Trinidad and Tobago, that has no relativity to productivity and cost of producing goods and services, and it is astronomical. For example, I go in China and I buy something for $1, and I come in Trinidad and sell it for $30. All right, and I could give you an example. I wanted to get a part. Everything is wrong with that. Everything is wrong with that. That is exploitation to the highest, right? What that means is that you're putting goods and services out of the reach of the ordinary citizen, the voiceless, the pensioners, and the people in the disadvantaged.
Well, we're in a free market economy, so somebody else. But we're in a free market economy, Mr. Annisette.
Hold on, we have a
so somebody else could sell it cheaper.
Hello, we have a responsibility in order to have that kind of conversation. And if you are telling me, and I'm surprised of your statement, and let me say it publicly, that you agree. Hold on. Let me give you an example. I had to get an engine for my car. I went to the dealer. right? He said it will cost over $300,000 to bring in an engine. And I was able to get that same engine for $6,000 US. The same engine.
Yes,
now, is that fair? No, hold on.
But it's not the same open market that Richard is talking about, where you see
no,
service, where you get it at a cheaper level.
No, hold on. We do not have an open market in Trinidad and Tobago. Why are we saying that? Why we don't want to face the facts, comrades? We have a monopolistic economy and business. Let us look at all the people who own the business. We could count them on our fingers. It is not an open economy. All right.
If you got the engine for $6,000 US, then it means the market is open.
It was available somewhere else.
No. What that means is that I was able to go on the internet, track it down, and I'm sure then that the obscene profits that this business dealer was making on the heads of people in Trinidad.
But nobody buys it at 300,000.
But you didn't have to buy it there. That's the point you're making. To buy it there.
Sir, let us assume that other people are not as fortunate as I am. The workers in Laventille is not that fortunate, brother. The worker in Gonzales, the workers in Point 40.
Mr. Annisette, you're making a bad analogy.
No,
because a worker in Laventille in any event ain't going and buy the engine for 300,000.
So you would have a car with an engine that worth 300,000.
He can't worth $300,000.
Yeah.
Hello, he cannot afford it. And I'm making the point because...
which is why he will go and search the internet. Even if he doesn't do it himself, he will get somebody to do it, and he will get it in for 30,000.
You are trying to justify a capitalism that has gone
No,
that is what you're doing.
No. I will never buy the engine for the 300,000 either.
With the greatest respect,
I will also do what you did.
All right. You are telling me, as a citizen of this country, that is all right for a businessman who have a monopoly on things to go and buy it for $2, all right, and then sell me for $100. That's what you saying.
He does
not have a monopoly.
How does he have a monopoly?
Hold on. And if that is your thinking, well, then we're in a sad place in Trinidad.
But how does he have a monopoly? Tell me.
If you can go and get it elsewhere, he does not have a monopoly.
Mr. Paul and the other interviews, right? Tell me now, you are saying that you are not aware that in Trinidad and Tobago, that there are certain business people who have a monopoly over everything in Trinidad and Tobago?
You're saying everything?
Yes, everything that I
You know it's everything?
Yes, I know it's everything.
I get your point. I get your point, Mr. Annisette. I get your point. I think that the state should be instituting some sort of price controls on basic food items.
Nobody...
Because and I think if people want to buy luxury food items, they pay for it if they can afford it. I think because of the position we're in, that the persons in lower socioeconomic groups should be able to get basic food items and feed their families. They should be able to get a reliable, efficient public transportation system, water and electricity, and telecom services at basic rates, because these are basic survival tools for any family in this country. I think after that, if you want to buy luxury items, go and pay the price.
And the issue of predatory pricing, which is what Michael Annisette is talking about. Yes, predatory pricing exists in Trinidad and Tobago. It does. But what businessmen now have to contend with is that Trinidadians and Tobagonians now have a choice, thanks to the internet, of getting access to those goods and services. The globe is now your competing space.
But somebody just made a point to me. Someone just made a point to me that the average, and this is the point Mr. Annisette will be able to rally with. The average person may not have the US to buy it online.
Right. I was going to make that point. US is a scarce commodity in Trinidad and Tobago. And while a lot of our people, workers, will like to say what you are saying, all right, they cannot get it. But more importantly, the very said minister would have now put on tax on those items on them because they were
And sometimes even with the tax, it's still less than the predatory pricing.
Hello?
The GPS tracking you. Go ahead.
Yeah. All right. Okay. Yeah. Getting track, boy. So then we are saying the right questions. We cannot get the US. I know a young lady who wants to open a business and who has a business running, and that young lady cannot get the US to bring in the goods, and she had to shut down. That is a reality in Trinidad and Tobago. Let me give you another reality that we are not talking about. As I speak to you, the National Trade Union Center is now on a drive to get food baskets to carry in the press communities. Do you know that it have mothers and children who don't eat a chicken, who don't have proper meals in Trinidad, in beautiful Trinidad and Tobago? And I could go in Amvalsin and see a house with 6 cars, and then we're not paying attention to that inequality. And then we want to know why we have crime and why drug is taking over in our country.
Well, we went into a whole different realm, which we'll invite you back to talk about.
The former
your points are valid in the context of inequality in the country, but we are at 8:15 now, and I know the news people want to kill me, so we want to thank you for being with us.
All right, the pleasure is mine, and I call on dock workers, port workers, all workers, nurses, everybody, to come out and take a stand. We must determine the kind of country that we want, not the politicians and the business.
Why are you turning off your camera?
Finances. Thank you very much.
Why are you turning off your camera?
No, sorry. Well, I wasn't even aware that the camera was on. Yeah, because a call was coming through before.
Be careful, you know. If you turn it off and you didn't know, you could turn it on and don't know, you know.
No. I have to go back. Hello. You remember that a call come and I got bumped off, so I was only getting the video. I am not afraid to show my face.
I ain't worried about the face, you know.
Yeah, well, the camera doesn't show my face.
Why the artist you can champion the cause of media people to, and invite them to come out, you know.
Well. We calling on YouTube because you say that you're underpaid. So I got to talk to Paul about that.
Yeah, all
right. You know who to talk to about that. Have a good day, Mr. Annisette.
I have to talk to Paul about that, boy. He must be underpaid. Oh God!
But what he's underpaid is it's made up for with several other goods and services that he gets.
Oh, all right. It's not like it is not like one of the people who run the table who salary is $56,000 a month, and it have others who is 70 something and 100 and something.
Somebody making $56,000 here? Wow.
No. Not by you. Not by you. I'm not talking about anybody.
Have a good day, Mr. Annisette.
I'm not talking about
Have
nobody.
a great day, Mr. Annisette.
No. Let me finish make that point now. Oh God, I want to make that point.
Go ahead.
So come on, people. Show your dissatisfaction in a peaceful way. Police commissioner, we are asking you to approve it. Follow all protocol. This is a peaceful march. It is a democratic right, and in a democratic society, people must be allowed to exhale.
Mr. Annisette, pay for ad now. Let me get a little raise. Pay for ad now. Let me get a little raise. Pay for
all right, okay. All right, listen. I'm going and call my administrative secretary now and say, do I add and send it for you? I only hope that you will get that money. I only do
Thank you.
Only if you get the money, yeah?
Mr. Annisette, you're not talking about the quality of shipment and Wendell alone must get the money. It must be spread.
No, hello. It's because he brings value to the table. So
it's only when you bring value you're supposed to get money.
Yeah.
Oh, I hear you.
Okay, so it shouldn't be spread equally to all the staff who work in the background to make sure the broadcast on the air. You understand? You see you going down a road now. Have a good day,
that I'm talking about, that he was able to raise his concern about not being paid fairly. But you didn't raise it. And
so what you're saying that you should get more money because you raised it all the issues this morning?
No.
Oh, okay, all right. Have a good day.
All right. So come out, workers, and blessings always. And we have to go back to our ancestral mothers and fathers for guidance.
All right. Michael Annisette, thank you so much for being on the
recording stop.
Power 102 Digital Power Breakfast Show. Thank you so much. All right. All the best now, Michael. Take care. Let's get into our news brief. A little late, but it was going quite interesting. I will tell you, it's all powered by Champlain Auto Services.